my
I got a weird heart, feels so cold.
Guys, welcome to an exciting episode of Pete for Society. I have a very special guest today. He is a teacher, songwriter. He's the songwriter at the School of Music and Mayhem in Stillwater, Minnesota. Please welcome in Joseph. Joseph, thank you so much for coming in, man. Joseph
Hello.
is here because
Thank you.
he reached out to me via email about a student of his named Delilah, who unfortunately had taken her life by suicide. They wrote a song together called Weird Hearts. Now, I invited Joseph to come on so we could talk about Delilah and just the whole process of what he's doing, because music is great. I think it's a great outlet for these kids and things like that, too. So, Joseph, why don't you take it away? Tell everybody a little more about yourself.
Hello. I am a songwriter at heart, and I converted that passion and love into a career. I have a program called the School of Music and Mayhem in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and I get to scream in a microphone for a living, and it's awesome. I get to not only get my bad voodoo out, but I get to write protest songs, and I get to just do this all day long and get my therapy out in the microphone.
Exactly. And I think music's a great thing when it comes to mental health too, because a lot of us use it to soothe ourselves when we're in a bad mood and things like that too. So I think it's great. Have you always worked with kids though when you've done music? Because I think we start them at an early age. I think it's a great outlet for them. Don't you agree?
Yeah, it is such a great outlet for adults too. So I have been playing since 9 years old and really writing just since day one, because I would drop the needle down and figure out, like, what are the Beatles doing? What are the Rolling Stones doing? Like, what's going on? And so I was writing at a very early age, and I was maybe 17 years old, and I was playing a gig, and somebody came up to me after the gig and said, "Hey, can you show me how to do what you do?" And I'm like, "Well, sure, of course." It just seemed like a natural thing to do. Is like, let's hang out and just kind of show you what I do. And that
Yeah.
just slowly evolved into learning how to teach. I chased down the singer-songwriter path as far as I could as a career, but it was teaching all along on the way. The interesting thing for me was there was a transition somewhere in there where I learned how to not just teach guitar or drum set or ukulele or bass or whatever, but it was to actually create the mayhem part of it, which was like, let's do jam sessions, let's get rough and raw. And if you have something you need to say, get it out. And so kids are writing lyrics like crazy. It's pretty interesting how I try to tell them that there's no box around what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. You just say whatever you want, even if it's, some forbidden words that your parents don't want to know about, get it out. And so it just took a long time to figure out how to do that, because that's not a traditional teaching system. So I'll take maybe like a rough example might be I might have a drum student and he's learning how to play the drums, but I'll be behind the guitar rocking out, writing a riff, and he's got to figure out how to play to that. And then next thing you know, I'm screaming in the microphone. Next thing you know, we wrote a great song, and he's like, "What just happened? That was incredible." And
Right.
he's thinking all along, "Hey, I'm working on beat number 19 out of the book or whatever." And I'm telling him, "No, those are just tools in the toolbox. You got to move beyond that and just think and hear the thing." So then if I take that beyond, then I'll have a guitar student or a bass student join us. And pretty soon those guys got microphones in front of them and they're screaming in the microphone thinking, "I'm a rock star." I'm like, "Yeah, you are a rock star in your own life. This is great. But get out your thoughts and ideas, even if it means something, a bad day, or if it means you're getting picked on at school or something's not going right at your job or whatever it is." And so there's that component of, you don't have to write a great song. You just have to write a song that means something to you and get it
Exactly.
out of you. And so the idea that I often tell students, I say, "Look, professional baseball players make the Hall of Fame if they bat 300. And that means they fail 7 out of 10 times." And so I'm like, we can do that too. Let's go ahead and write a bunch of really bad songs on purpose, but just getting our thoughts and feelings out and screaming it and just letting it go. And hey, if we happen to get a base hit along the way, who's going to complain about that? So if we
Yeah.
happen to launch into a great song along the way, that's great. And so there's this freeing effect that happened when I learned that I can get kids to do that as well. Not only kids, but adults too.
Yeah. No, I get that completely. I love music. Music's always been a big thing in my life. It depends what I'm feeling, and like you said, a lot of them, I'm sure they'll tell you they failed before. A lot of them try, not everybody writes a great song. Like, take all the 90s, for example, one hit wonders all the way through there, man. Like everybody had at least one hit song at some point, and it didn't matter what it was. They just wrote it and just kind of put it out there. And I think that's great what you're doing for these kids, giving them an outlet, and at the same time, their appreciation of music, because they're learning how the process works. It's very, very Jack Black from School of Rock kind of feel, you know what I mean? Like he was so passionate about it. He's just like, here, let me show you guys can do something more creative than just what you think you can do kind of thing. And that's really cool though. I mean, so that's awesome though, man. So let's get into the reason we're here, okay? So the Delilah, okay? I know you mentioned her in the email. So what was the story of Delilah basically? How did you guys meet originally?
Yeah, so Delilah's mom called me and she says, I have a 10-year-old daughter and she needs a safe harbor. She's not doing well. She's tried therapy and they're still doing therapy, but she's been through therapy and she's not doing well. She needs a safe harbor. She loves music. Your program looks different to mine. Tell me more. And so I'm like, well, first of all, the school of music, that's great, but the mayhem part of it, let's dive into that. And so Delilah shows up this first day and she's super cool, super artsy, and you could just tell she was awesome, and she's 10 years old. And about, I don't know, within 5 minutes, she and I are hanging out writing songs together. It was a really cool moment. And I think maybe after 6 months or so, she and I started writing this song called Weird Heart. And it was an expression of, I've got a weird heart, I've got a cold heart, I've got a mean heart. Everything is like feeling off a little bit. The idea that, hey, something doesn't feel right. And so we ended up, bumping into like roadblocks on that one, and we went on and wrote other songs, and we would always kind of come back to Weird Heart. Let's revisit this and work on it some more. So yeah, we're in the process always of dabbling and working. And then this one particular Friday, she's here, and we had a great session that night. And I get a phone call the next day, and Delilah was dead. And I'm like, what is going on? And she had taken her life. She was here on a Friday night. And Saturday morning, she was gone. And no note, even if there is a note, it still doesn't explain anything.
Guys, welcome to an exciting episode of Pete Frick Society. I have a very special guest today. He is a teacher, songwriter. He's the songwriter at the School of Music and Mayhem in Stillwater, Minnesota. Please welcome in Joseph. Joseph, thank you so much for coming in, man. Joseph
Hello.
is here
Thank
because
you.
he reached out to me via email about a student of his named Delilah, who unfortunately had taken her life by suicide. They wrote a song together called Weird Hearts. Now, I invited Joseph to come on so we could talk about Delilah and just the whole process of what he's doing, because music is great. I think it's a great outlet for these kids and things like that too. So Joseph, why don't you take it away? Tell everybody a little more about yourself.
Hello. I am a songwriter at heart, and I converted that passion and love into a career. I have a program called the School of Music and Mayhem in the Minneapolis St. Paul area, and I get to scream in a microphone for a living, and it's awesome. I get to not only get my bad voodoo out, but I get to write protest songs, and I get to just do this all day long and get my therapy out in the microphone.
Exactly. And I think music's a great thing when it comes to mental health too, because a lot of us use it to soothe ourselves when we're in a bad mood and things like that too. So I think it's great. Have you always worked with kids though when you've done music? Because I think we start them at an early age. I think it's a great outlet for them. Don't you agree?
Yeah, it is such a great outlet for adults too. So I have been playing since 9 years old and really writing just since day one, because I would drop the needle down and figure out like, what are the Beatles doing? What are the Rolling Stones doing? Like, what's going on? And so I was writing at a very early age, and I was maybe 17 years old, and I was playing a gig, and somebody came up to me after the gig and said, "Hey, can you show me how to do what you do?" And I'm like, "Well, sure, of course." It just seemed like a natural thing to do. Is like, let's hang out and just kind of show you what I do. And that
Yeah.
just slowly evolved into learning how to teach. I chased down the singer-songwriter path as far as I could as a career, but it was teaching all along on the way. The interesting thing for me was there was a transition somewhere in there where I learned how to not just teach guitar or drum set or ukulele or bass or whatever, but it was to actually create the mayhem part of it, which was like, let's do jam sessions, let's get rough and raw. And if you have something you need to say, get it out. And so kids are writing lyrics like crazy. It's pretty interesting how I try to tell them that there's no box around what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. You just say whatever you want, even if it's, some forbidden words that your parents don't want to know about, get it out. And so it just took a long time to figure out how to do that, because that's not a traditional teaching system. So I'll take maybe like a rough example might be I might have a drum student and he's learning how to play the drums, but I'll be behind the guitar rocking out, writing a riff, and he's got to figure out how to play to that. And then next thing you know, I'm screaming in the microphone. Next thing you know, we wrote a great song, and he's like, "What just happened? That was incredible." And
Right.
he's thinking all along, hey, I'm working on beat number 19 out of the book or whatever. And I'm telling him, no, those are just tools in the toolbox. You got to move beyond that. Just think and hear the thing. So then if I take that beyond, then I'll have a guitar student or a bass student join us. And pretty soon those guys got microphones in front of them and they're screaming in the microphone thinking, I'm a rock star. I'm like, yeah, you are a rock star in your own life. This is great. But get out your thoughts and ideas, even if it means something, a bad day, or if it means you're getting picked on at school or something's not going right at your job or whatever it is. And so there's that component of, you don't have to write a great song. You just have to write a song that means something to you. and get it
Exactly.
out of you. And so the idea that I often tell students, I say, look, professional baseball players make the Hall of Fame if they bat 300. And that means they fail 7 out of 10 times. And so I'm like, we can do that too. Let's go ahead and write a bunch of really bad songs on purpose, but just getting our thoughts and feelings out and screaming it and just letting it go. And hey, if we happen to get a base hit along the way, who's going to complain about that? So if we
Yeah.
happen to launch into a great song along the way, that's great. And so there's this freeing effect that happened when I learned that I can get kids to do that as well. Not only kids, but adults too.
Yeah, no, I get that completely. I love music. Music's always been a big thing in my life. It just it depends what I'm feeling. Like and like you said, a lot of them, I'm sure they'll tell you they failed before. A lot of them try. Not everybody writes a great song. Like take all the '90s for example, one hit wonders all the way through there, man. Like everybody had at least one hit song at some point, and it didn't matter what it was. They just wrote it and just kind of put it out there. And I think that's great what you're doing for these kids, giving them an outlet, and at the same time, their appreciation of music because they're learning how the process works. It's very, very Jack Black from School of Rock kind of feel, you know what I mean? Like he was so passionate about it. He's just like, here, let me show you guys can do something more creative than just what you think you can do kind of thing. And that's really cool though. I mean, so that's awesome though, man. So let's get into the reason we're here, okay? So the Delilah, okay? I know you mentioned her in the email. So what was the story of Delilah basically? How did you guys meet originally?
Yeah, so Delilah's mom called me and she says, I have a 10-year-old daughter and she needs a safe harbor. She's not doing well. She's tried therapy and they're still doing therapy, but she's been through therapy and she's not doing well. She needs a safe harbor. She loves music. Your program looks different to mine. Tell me more. And so I'm like, well, first of all, the school of music, that's great, but the mayhem part of it, let's dive into that. And so Delilah shows up this first day and she's super cool, super artsy, and you could just tell she was awesome. And she's 10 years old. And about, I don't know, within 5 minutes, she and I are hanging out writing songs together. It was a really cool moment. And I think maybe after 6 months or so, she and I started writing this song called Weird Heart. And it was an expression of, I've got a weird heart, I've got a cold heart, I've got a mean heart. It just, everything is like feeling off a little bit. The idea that, hey, something doesn't feel right, even at 10 years old. And so we ended up, bumping into like roadblocks on that one. And we went on and wrote other songs. And we would always kind of come back to Weird Heart. Let's revisit this and work on it some more. So yeah, we're in the process always of dabbling and working. And then this one particular Friday, she's here, and we had a great session that night. And I get a phone call the next day, and Delilah was dead. And we're like, what is going on? And she had taken her life. She was here on a Friday night. And Saturday morning, she was gone. And no note, even if there is a note, it still doesn't explain anything because there's never
Yeah.
a really good reason for this. But no note. What we have left is her mom had asked me, can you dig through your demos and find some of the stuff that you're working on? And here's something that's really interesting that I have regrets about, but also it's very interesting to me is that I got her to open up because I promised her I wasn't going to be recording. And that's 100% true. But there was one time when I had the mic going for me. And I could hear her in the background, like, oh, yeah, that was the day we first started working on Weird Heart. But she was so like, because kids these days, they're so worried they're being filmed and put on
Hmm.
streaming media 24/7. Unless it's guaranteed that it's shut off, they're not going to open up. And so I just 100% guaranteed her. I'm like, I'm not going to be recording you unless we have the record button going on the official thing. And so I got her to do that. But anyway, here we are. She and I are sitting there writing songs for the last 2 years. We started Weird Heart, and we technically it didn't get finished until after her death. I had to find my way out of some of those roadblocks that we painted ourselves into. And so it took us, I mean, you could say then it took about 2 years to finish the song. But here's the interesting story about that one. I was asked for her celebration of life, I was asked to perform. And I said, yeah, of course, I'll for sure do it. I said, but I want to show everybody what Delilah and I would do. And so what we did is we had people write thoughts, feelings, and emotions and memories of Delilah on these big, huge tagboard sheets. And then I took those tagboard sheets and I sat in front of 400 people and I wrote 5 or 6 songs just from scratch with those ideas that they had on those tagboards. And I told everybody ahead of time, I'm like, this is not supposed to be a great song. This is just supposed to be a song that we get going and steamroll and get working and kind of workshop the ideas. And so in front of 400 people, we're just like, wow, you can do that. And this is what Delilah would do every day. I'm like, yeah, this is what she would come in the door and she would just start screaming thoughts and feelings. And screaming's a weird word, but we use it. It's a tool.
Yeah.
And And so everyone that came up to me afterwards, like, I can't believe that's even possible. How in the world are you doing that? And it's like, well, it's the easiest thing in the world. Once you open up that little gate and exercise that muscle to just throw stuff out there and don't expect it to be great. Expect it to be one of those 7 baseball player hits that don't work. 7 out of 10, you're not going to
Mhm.
succeed. And just be thankful when it does succeed. And then super, super rarely do you hit a home run. Like, okay, great. Well, that's us hitting writing a great song. And it's like, that's awesome. And so we just have to play those odds, but expect nothing out of it. And so Delilah bought into that early in terms of just like, okay, I'm not going to try to write a song as good as blankety blank, you know. She was a
Yeah.
huge fan of Nirvana, which unfortunately Kurt Cobain did something really bad that we, like that's, oh my God, how can that be a role model? But what an amazing artist, what an amazing creator of melody. And so what I would tell her was don't try to compete with that. Just write the worst song you can possibly think of right now. And that way it'll be the easiest thing to do. And so once we get down that road, it's like, okay, I can open my mouth and just sing about why is this fly buzzing around my head and bugging me, or why is,
Right.
just write the stupidest thing in the world. And all of a sudden the floodgates are open. And so here we are. We work on Weird Heart probably 4 or 5 times throughout the last year and a half. Delilah passes, and they asked me to play at her celebration of life, and so I totally agreed. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so that day I ended up writing, I don't know, 4 or 5 songs live in front of everybody. But 2 weeks before the event, they called and they said, hey, we need another song. We've got our flow of the system worked out. We need another song. And I said, well, what song do you need? And they go, well, anything. And I thought about it. I thought, well, Amazing Grace or Alleluia. Dang, anybody in the world can do that. But there's only one person in the world that can finish Weird Heart. And I'm looking at him in the mirror like, I got to step up and finish this song that she and I started.
Yeah.
And so I had about 2 weeks to finish it up. And man, talk about a grieving and therapeutic process for me. Because here I got this young 12-year-old kid who committed suicide. She was 10 when she started lessons here, but 12 when she died. And I saw her like 12 hours before this happened. So I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I have to process too.
It'd be hard though. I mean, you're trying to finish a song, hearing her voice in the beginning of that song, and remembering all the things that she was, and it's hard when, especially when 12-year-old ended up taking their life. I mean, she had a bright future ahead of her. From what I heard, she had a bright future, man. Like I shared it with somebody earlier, and they were like, "Man," I'm like, "You're telling me like she sounded so good though for 12 years old." She's like, "She sounded way more mature." It's the first comment I got was, "Whoa, she sounded way more mature than 12. Are you sure? That's a 12-year-old kid." I'm like, "Yeah, that's a 12-year-old kid making this song here."
Yeah. You just hit on something really, really interesting. I don't know if there's parallels, and I don't know if there's any scientific studies out there on this, but I had a jam session with Delilah one day, and she was with a 14-year-old drummer and a 16-year-old bass player, and all 3 were girls, and they were all rocking. And at the end of the session, I just, I'm super dyslexic and super left-handed, so count 2 strikes against me. But I just don't have the brain capacity to always quantify everything because I'm so in the moment of writing lyrics. And I
Yeah,
just flippantly said at the end of the session, I said, y'all are about the same age. Let's do another jam session together. That was really great. So the first 2 girls leave, and Delilah is left over. She looks at me and she leans in close. She goes, dude, I'm 11 years old. I'm like, wait, what? And I had totally forgot because she carries herself
yeah,
as if she's 16. That's what I mean by I don't know if there's scientific studies out there about people who just tend to carry themselves at a very young age, but at an older age they carry themselves. And she had that. I just thought I knew what age she was because I was told when she started lessons, but once we became songwriting friends, you throw away all that statistical garbage and all you do is become best lyrical buddies, and that's it. You don't There's no prejudgment about who your past was. There's no
yeah,
prejudgment about where your family came from. There's no prejudgment about anything. It's just simply you and I in the honesty of the moment. Let's be what we can. And that's the art of it. And so she carried herself with that. Now, I don't know many 10 or 11 and 12-year-olds that can sit there and be that honest with the microphone at that age. So she
yeah.
just carried herself much older.
Yeah, yeah, she did. Like I said, the sound alone, too. Like that's what a lot of people were saying. They're like, she sounds older, and I was like, yeah, this is a 12-year-old kid singing, man. I was like, this is pretty good. Like, I listened to it, and I was like, damn, this is a really good song. I'm like, oh yeah, Joseph's killing it over there too. But Delilah's in the beginning was just like, it just made you feel something because I know the story and I've shared this email
Yeah.
with other people. I said, hey, listen to this song really quick, and I want your opinions, and then I'm gonna send you something to read right afterwards. And I sent him your original email. I said, read this email and tell me what you think." And a lot of them were like, "Wow, yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, see?"
Yeah.
I'm like, You didn't know the story, but I mean, it's just like that's the great thing about music. Doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. It's a great
Yeah.
song. It's a great song. Then when you get the story of this poor little girl that was struggling, and her only outlet was music apparently,
Yeah.
and just like some of the great songwriters, like, Kurt Cobain was great, but unfortunately, whatever
Right.
though we all know the situation with him, and it was like, I just like, it was hard, man, especially when it comes to suicide. It's a tough topic, especially with 12-year-old kids, because it's like she had such a life to live,
Yeah.
and just like you said, you didn't have any idea what she was planning on doing, and then unfortunately, it just happened, and that phone call, I'm sure that rocked you. There's no way that didn't, and you're like, wow. And then you start asking yourself, did I notice something? Did I miss something? And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people don't realize it's really nothing you could have done. You don't know if they already had a plan. Unfortunately, sometimes nothing you say or do is going to change their thoughts of that, And unfortunately, whatever she was struggling with, she just couldn't deal with it anymore. And it's sad to hear her go.
Yeah.
But her voice will live on forever in this song now. Now she's immortalized in this song, like a lot of like rock legends and things like that too. And to me, she's a legend in our own minds now, because now we have
Yeah.
this song to remember her by. So I don't know if you've seen my email, but for the intro for this song, for this episode is going to actually be that song. I'm going to put that original clip of her singing into you is going to be the actual intro for this song. Normally it's "Is It Me" by Let Me Bleed is actually the one I got the EOK and the copyrights for it. But I actually, for this episode, I'm going to actually put Wild Hearts is going to be the intro for the song, so everybody can hear it. I'm going to tag everybody. I'm going to put where to find it, all the different things, so everybody can hear her song, and hear all the
Awesome.
work and everything she did, man. Because I think what you were doing is great. I could just like, when I got your email, it touched my heart, man. I was like, oh my God, I do this show all the time. I get emails all the time, but I think yours stood out the most because it was just like, this 12-year-old little girl, unfortunately took her life. And I know suicide's a tough topic for a lot of people to talk about. So there will be a trigger warning in the beginning of this episode, obviously, just because, it's a very troubling subject, and actually your email actually gave me the idea. There's another guest I had on the show that I did a suicide awareness videos with, lady named Reshna Carney. Her kids actually were starting to speak up about being suicide survivors of their dads. So I actually reached out to her and I said, "Hey, listen, what do your kids think about giving their thoughts of what it's like to be a kid that had lost somebody to this and what it's like to interact with other people?" So you gave me the idea after reading
Yeah.
that. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll reach out and see what she thinks about this. So actually, there'll be some things that are coming up that your email inspired me to go do. I was like, you know what? I'm thinking I'm going to try and see, maybe we can start getting some of these younger kids to talk about these things
Yeah.
and see
I
what
love
it's
that.
like, especially on a tough topic like that, man. And it's rough. It really is
Yeah.
when it comes to suicide, man. And this show doesn't get any easier. Recording these episodes sometimes, you'll get into these conversations, man, where it's just like you have to listen to these people talk about how they've had to tell someone, and Resha had to tell these kids at 6 and 7 that their dad had committed suicide. Like, imagine having to tell your kids that your dad had taken their life at that young of age, and then now they've lived all this life, and now they've had to tell people that, hey, listen, my dad took their life. So now my idea for the show episode is going to be is this perspective of what it's like for these kids after the fact, and like how people react to them when, hey, I tell them, hey, my dad passed away by suicide, and see what people say, because it's like, you never know what kids are thinking, and maybe give us a better insight to what kids at that age are thinking.
Yeah. Now, the survivor piece is a tough one, isn't it? Because we always have that. There's this in songwriting, by the way, we try to avoid cliches like crazy, but I'm going to quote one
Hmm.
now. In suicide, they often talk about permanent solutions to temporary problems. Man, you have left behind another permanent problem, though, which is the survivors.
Yeah. It's hard
Yeah,
though,
so I don't buy that cliche saying at all because it might seem like it, but boy, you're leaving behind survivors. And you touched on something interesting about 2 minutes ago, and that was the idea of Delilah, her voice and her song is going to live on long past me, hopefully, meaning that it'll be out there forever. Man, talk about leaving a legacy behind. Holy crap. That's
Mhm.
incredible. I
Yeah,
just can't think of
she's gonna
something.
live on forever with this podcast too. This is gonna be everywhere. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, everywhere that you can get your podcasts at. This song will be heard in the intro and everything else, and it'll be tagged on forever. And like I said, I'm gonna and for suicide awareness next year, I'm gonna definitely play it again. Have the song, do a little package of video with that being the song underneath as well too. That way, her
Yeah,
memory lives on forever. You know what I mean? Because like I
yeah,
want people to understand that that this is have these conversations. It's so interesting. And
yeah,
like I said, music is a great soother for people with mental health. So what you're doing is great, teaching these kids a new outlet and, giving them their own little area to just kind of do what they want to do and be creative. And I think that's great though, because A lot of kids,
Yeah.
I feel like they feel like their creativity shut down nowadays with parents coming down on them with, all these different sites. You can't put things out there, like you could. Like you said, they're afraid they're being recorded and put on social media.
Yeah.
And with all those weirdos out there, you have to be careful as a parent though. Like you can't even play online games nowadays without somebody trying to prey on your kid these days, but they have you though to go to at least have that outlet, and plus you're teaching them something cool, music. Why not? That's always impressive. Hey, I wrote this song, now you can live on and memorialize it. Hey, look, I wrote a song as a kid, why not? It's so cool though.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, for me mentally though, I get to scream in the microphone too, and so there's a process there that's great as an adult. It's a hidden
Right?
feature of my job. That's awesome. Yeah, I
So,
have. It's really funny. I'll tell you a small story quick. I have two of my adult students are drummers,
mhm,
and they happen to be therapists for a living. And
really?
about 50% of the time when they're walking out the door, I'll say something along the lines of, "Hey, have a great week." And about 50% of the time, they turn around to me and go, "Thanks for the therapy." And they walk out the door. I'm like, what?
Well, I mean, think about it. Music is therapeutic, though. I mean, that's a lot of people go to. Like, you're having a bad day, you have that song that always is, always is something that you go to. Like, you always have that one song you feel like, in the show, I always ask people near the end, which I'll just ask you right now because normally I wait to the end. But if your mental health had a song, Joseph, what would that song be? I'm very interested to know the answer to this one for you. So the question is for you that I ask everybody is that if your mental health had a song, what would that song be?
I have the perfect answer. For me, it's the next song. It's the next one that I get to write. It's always the next one. There's always something out there that I can chase next and dangle and work on and process and do it. Yeah. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
ambiguous for the rest of the world, but for me, it's
No,
perfect. It's
there's no
always the
wrong
next
answer
one.
to it. It's a great question though, because every time I ask people
Yeah,
that question, they're always like, "Damn, that's a great question." Because
yeah.
ever since somebody asked me that question, I was like, you know what? That's actually a good question. Let's ask people and see what their thoughts are. And there's
Yeah.
no wrong answer to it. So you being a music guy, it's like obviously we got to
No,
ask the music man about what's his song is
right.
going to be.
Yeah, so I often get asked that same question, but in a desert island. Like, okay, if you have one song to bring with you on the desert island, what are you going to bring? And for me, it's the same answer. It's always the next song. So that means I get to keep writing. There's always another one.
Yeah.
But if I had to go with like and actually pick two songs right now that mean something super important to me in that field, one is Imagine by John Lennon. Holy
Okay.
crap.
Okay.
That's like next world sort of think about the peace and harmony that we could have. Whoa, what's missing? The other one that's really relevant now is Olivia Rodrigo's a young pop star right now. And on her last album, she has a song called Pretty Isn't Pretty Enough.
Yeah.
And holy crap, there's a ton of emotion in there that is just packed in. And it's not just about girls, it's about boys who are flexing their muscles, going, dang, I'm not good enough, big enough, fast enough, whatever. It's that we're all thinking we're not enough in some way. And man, her song processes that emotion really well.
I love the fact you said Olivia Rodrigo because that means you're just in tune with everything music wise. Because I love her songs too. I just think that she's so interesting because she doesn't care. She's like, I'm gonna write this, I don't care, basically. And it's like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what it is, and it's so cool that you're so in tune to some of the newer stuff too. Things like
Well, I'll
that
let you into
too.
a small secret. When I have adults come in and I'll ask them, "Hey, what's your favorite genre or whatever?" And they'll tell me a list of bands or whatever. I'll say, "Oh, so you had kids at this date." And they'll go, "How did you know?" And I'm like, "Because that's when you're listening, you stopped and you just got stuck in music." I've never had that because I've been teaching my whole life long. I've just always had these teenagers coming in sharing bands with me and sharing songs. And so my son, he comes in and he always tells me, he goes, "Dad, you listen to music like a 14-year-old girl." Like, jeez.
It's awesome though. I mean, at least you're staying in tune with a lot of the stuff. These kids are keeping you up to date with a lot of the new stuff. And things like that
Yeah,
as well. I like MGK is one of my newer favorite ones. I
there you
think I
go.
know I didn't like him as a rapper, but I liked him as a pop punk artist more. And he's like,
Yeah,
I just like what he does, and a lot of his songs hit home for you, because it's just
right
him
on.
going through the struggles and things like that, and a lot of them, and some of my other favorite songs are like, Leave a Light On, Talk Away the Dark by Pop.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
So that I'm like, you know what I mean? It's horrible. It really is, and then
yeah.
and then taking next step, men like ourselves, you always have those guys on there telling these younger men, oh well, you need to match you up. I'm like,
You need
stop.
to man up.
God, it's so horrible. It's like just quit. Like it's okay to have an honest conversation about how you feel. If you're struggling, go get help. I mean, there's not enough. We can't say it enough times to people, but we're still losing people at an alarming rate to suicide, and it's hard. It's like, I always ask this question though. It's like, when do you feel like, what percentage is it going to take for you to finally start talking about these things? Like,
Yeah.
like when are we going to swallow our pride and admit that, hey, listen, I need help, because to me it's like, we've just been so brainwashed by these different generational gaps of how they thought. And then, like, you can't get wrong at the older generation because that's just how they grew up. Like, you can't get too upset with it because that's just the way it is. But we need to start altering our thinking from we don't need to talk about these things to we need to start being more expressive about these things, start talking about our feelings. 'Cause, like Chester Pennington was another one, man. He just like
Yeah.
when he was gone, like, all his songs, everybody just like constantly, man, like his songs are
Yeah.
played all the time, and it's just like this guy was literally telling you about his struggles every single day, and everybody's like, well, I didn't see it coming. I'm like, nobody does sees it
Yeah.
coming. I mean, we didn't see it when Delilah did it. We didn't see when Chester, a lot of these people you don't see when it comes. And that's the scary part about it. It's like, everybody's like, oh, look at the warning signs. But as you just said, there was no warning signs. You guys just had a great session. 12 hours later, unfortunately, she's gone now. And it's like,
Yeah.
with the great thing with music, though, is now she lives on forever because now her voice is out there. Like, you're not going to erase that. It's still going to be there. Think about
Yeah.
all the think about all the songs that are still out there now.
The legacy piece of the puzzle is a really important one, I think. And that's true for pretty much all art. I mean, there are forms of art that don't. Ice sculptures and food
Hmm.
sculptures, they're not going to last forever. But the idea of any really art as expression, you have a chance
Hmm.
at not only getting some of your thoughts and feelings out, whether it's pushing paint around or chiseling something or sculpting, singing, whatever it is, but you also have a chance to leave behind that legacy too. And that's an important one to feel a sense of value.
Yeah. Yeah. I think she's going to live on forever through Wild Hearts. Man, I think it's going to be, or Weird Hearts. My bad. I just messed with the song.
Hey, you're as dyslexic as I am.
Right, exactly. But it's just like it's gonna live on forever, man. It's a great thing about it, though. She's gonna be immortalized for what she created. I don't even think she realized what she created when she just was just speaking from the heart. And
Right. And that
it's the hardest thing.
yeah. And so when her mom called about the idea of, hey, she needs a safe haven, that's really what that all was about. Is someplace free to express freely and just get it out no matter what it takes. And it's almost an interesting take on, I do think, get therapy and get help when you need it. But some people bottle up in the therapy situation, and this is a separate outlet, a chance
Yeah,
to let it out, as well as anything. I mean, there are other avenues for that too, whether it's maybe kickboxing or things that you can do. Uh,
yeah, definitely.
whether mental or physical.
No, I
But
agree.
songwriting for me hit home, and I knew early on that I just needed to do it somehow. And I'm lucky that I still get to do it and pass along the tradition to the younger generation.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It really is cool that you're continuing to do it regardless of, everything going on and the fact you're still pushing on. Because some people loss just eats them alive, and they don't, and the fact that you're still, pushing on the legacy and still doing the same thing you did for Delilah that you're doing for these kids nowadays is fantastic, man. I really think what
Yeah.
you're doing is great, man. So I'm so excited that, you're still there teaching these guys, giving them that outlet and letting them know that it's okay to fail. You know what I mean? Everybody fails, but it's how you get back up is how you do it the best.
Well, the failure part of it's an interesting one because I always start out with telling kids, like, on purpose, I'm just going to write a really bad song in front of you, and I'll just look around the room and I'll go, hey, I'm wearing blue socks or whatever, and just write about stupid stuff that I observe. And I'm like, okay, your turn. And they're like, what am I going to do? I'm like, just look at the stickers on the music stand or look at the posters on the wall. Just talk about anything just randomly bad. And lo and behold, they do it. I'm like, well, all you did is they have to relieve the pressure from going, oh, I'm not as good as Taylor Swift. Dude, I got news for you too. I don't have as many hit songs as Taylor Swift does either.
I don't think anybody does compared to Taylor
No,
Swift. God, no, she puts everybody
no,
in pale comparison.
no. And it's so funny because that's what we do. We compare against all these great songs that have made hits. And I got to tell you, it is a pyramid. Taylor Swift, we only know about her great stuff. She's written a whole bunch of bad stuff down there that she never releases. And that's okay. This is what all of us writers do. I heard a great quote from Ed Sheeran the other day, and it was, what are you going to say to your kids when they tell you that they want to do what you do? And he says, I dare you to fail. I dare you to suck at this. The interviewer's like, what? He goes, yeah, you have to fail at this so many times before you figure out how to do it. That the
Yeah,
only way to figure out how to do it is to fail at it. It's the only way. You can take music theory school all you want, but all those are tools and they're just sitting in that toolbox. But until you start carving that masterpiece, those tools aren't going to do you any good. You've got to get working.
Yeah, true, very true. Even if you ask a lot of them, see where a lot of them come from. It's like you'll see a lot of them had to do a lot of failures. I think the real great one though was the Bohemian Rhapsody, the documentary they did where they had done that one on the big old the biography where they were doing the whole remake of the whole thing, how the whole I went down that one in Dirt Red or whatever the one was with the other one I'm thinking of. That one too was really good. That one I really enjoyed though because it's like look how much they had to fail to finally get somewhere, and it's like
Yeah.
it teaches them at an early age so to understand that it's okay to fail because I think that's what a lot of people's biggest fear is like they're going to fail at this. Like go ask Taylor Swift, like you said, ask her how many songs she's written that are just duds, and they're like a lot of people have those times. Like think of some of these guys' albums that come out and just don't do anything, but then they come out with another one and it's just fire right off the track. You know what I'm saying? Like it happens. A lot of these guys go through that process, and the evolution of their sound. Some people change their sound from where they were in the beginning and then to where they're now. It's like ask them what they learned.
Yeah.
Like I had to fail to get there. Like, think of like a lot of the bands that broke up, like Rage Against the Machine. They split up and they got back together. It's
Yeah.
not an easy process. A lot of these guys will tell you that it's like you want to be a musician. It's hard. It's not easy. They won't lie to you. A lot of these guys will be honest with you, and like, it's just
Yeah.
interesting to see, we're teaching them at an early age, though, hey, listen, it's okay to fail. Like you said, the baseball analogy, like think of all the greatest hitters out there. A lot of them at first weren't the greatest hitters. Like everybody can't be Babe Ruth or Lou Gehrig or any of these guys that are just right off the bat amazing hitters. A lot of these guys had to work to get there, think
Yeah.
about like Tony Gwynn, who was waiting for the Padres for the longest time and the Brewers and all that stuff. He didn't get to where he was just there. He'll tell you he failed along the way. A lot of these guys have lived long careers. Like Randy Johnson didn't get really big until later on in his career too, and he ended up, doing really great things. So, you never know when it's gonna be lightning in a bottle for people, especially for a lot of these songwriters. Some of these guys hit one-hit wonders like the 90s. Like we go through the 90s and list off like 20 different songs that people have just made, and then where are they now?
Yeah.
We don't know. Some guys
Yeah.
are still
Well,
writing and some aren't, you know what I mean? It just depends.
yeah. The idea of a hit song though is most often outside of the songwriter's control. The
Mhm.
only thing that I can control is what I do, and that is write a better song. Keep writing and keep writing and write a better song. Outside of that, boy, you have societal things that happen, and you have the mood of the, of the world, and you have so many things that are outside of your control. You just can't do all that. So a lot of times for a one hit wonder, way out of their control.
Yeah.
The other piece of the puzzle is, boy, I wish they were just continually writing and writing and writing, because I think oftentimes when we have an album that comes out from maybe a band from your past, and they're like, oh, we got our first new album in 10 years. And then you listen to it and you're like, this thing sucks. What the hell? And
Yep.
what
Yep.
happens is they got together in the studio and they wrote 12 songs for the album of 12 songs. And in my world, no, you have to write 1,200 songs and pick the best 12. What are you doing? And so the people that are writing every day, just processing and pushing, you're going to hear the cream of the crop, and you're not just going to accept the first 12. Out of those first 12, you might have one verse that's good. You have to write 100 songs to find a great idea.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's a process, and you can tell though based on what people have been still doing the process and some that aren't because, now it's different how they release albums versus how they used to for us. Remember, back then you had the CDs, oh, you're waiting around for the drop to come out. Now they're like trickling out their songs little by little, and you
Yeah.
can tell who's putting in that work,
Yeah.
based on how good the songs are. Like, one that's really been capturing my eyes lately is Let Me Bleed is one I really like. Like these guys, you could tell he's put in the work because he's just constantly writing new stuff all the time and he's releasing it. And it doesn't matter. He's like, whatever, I'm just going to drop this thing out. If it hits, it hits. If it
Yeah.
don't, it don't. I'm not here for the hits. I'm here for just doing what I want. And you could tell those people that are passionate versus the ones that are just kind of like, oh, well, I'm going to put an album together. It's been a while, we're going to, it's like, yeah, no, you could see the guys that have been putting in the work and stuff like that. So, I kind of like how they're releasing music now. It's like they're letting little tracks come off one at a time. And they're always hinting, and we've had a couple of the musicians on the show. Lucy Lenore is one of them. She's a part of a band called Haunter, and she's never played a live concert before. She'd been on the show, and this recent year she started doing live shows and stuff. And this woman has like 500 something downloads, and you never even know. She was totally
Yeah.
cool. She came on the show, talked about her own mental health issues she had, was a big
Yeah.
advocate too. Didn't even realize that when I invited her to come on, she was a huge advocate. We had Alive and Stone come on. Another guy is based out of Florida. Brian was on there for a while with us. Me and him were chatting for a bit, and you could just see how passionate he was about it because he was just He's like, if you don't mimic someone else's sound, you're not doing it right. You're not showing flattery to other people because that whole statement came out. And I was like, that's very interesting to think about it because you think about how many people sound similar to each other, and it's like you don't hear people knocking at them. Oh, well, you sound like this person. And like when I grew up in the '90s, I was a big Stain guy. Like Aaron Lewis, I loved everything he did. You could just tell. But I'm
Yeah.
sure if you asked Aaron, like, how many times he wrote, how many different songs he wrote and everything else, how long it took him to get there, I guarantee it took him a while to get to where he was at,
Oh yeah.
and his songs are very emotional and things like that too. And then, like, say, like, Cold was another band I was big into. Jeremy and the guys there, they were very interesting too. There's you could have very similar sounds, but their messages were the same. Like, you could feel it in their songs as they're singing. I'm like, it's just like it's rough. Say like you take a
Right.
band like Slipknot, people are like, oh wow, that's just no, no, don't discredit them just because you don't
Right.
like the genre they are. Okay, they're
Right. That's
great.
the
They're
thing. That's the thing that I try to tell kids too, all my songwriting students, is don't worry about what genre you're in. Let the song write itself. So if you had
hmm
your mind set that you're going to be writing a heavy metal tune and all of a sudden just it slips out of you and it's a country tune, chase it. Don't put it aside just because it wasn't the thing you thought it was going to be. Let it have its own personality and its own thing and then see where it goes. Just chase that song.
Yeah, think about it though. Like, what is it? The guy from Derry Ruckus from Hootie and the Blowfish, he does country music too. MGK did
Yep.
rap, and now he does pop punk. You know what I mean? Like all these guys. What the movie I'm thinking of? Like, I'm a big movie guy, so that thing you do is the one that comes to mind when you say that. Because think of how Jimmy wrote that song originally. It was a very slow song, and he's like, no, no, you got to pick up the pace a little bit. Let this thing evolve into something else, and it turned out better as what it evolved into versus where it started. And I feel like that's the
Yeah.
same message you're telling these guys.
Yeah.
Note, he wrote a song called Trust the Process. So same thing like you said, it started out as something he was forcing it to be versus what his
Mm,
dad told him he'd done music for a long time. He said the same exact thing you said. He said, "Hey, just let the thing let it take its own life. Like let it go where it
yeah.
goes." And then he wrote it as a rock version, and it sounded way better. It was way bigger hit. It sounds way, you know what I mean? He just let it evolve.
Yeah.
And he even said the same thing in the conversation because his dad was a rapper from the '90s, and his mom was the rock person. So he has a mixture of that influence in there, and you can see the influence of his parents, and things like that too. And he was like, "Yeah, I was just, playing around with it." And he's like, he released the original version versus what it sounds like now, and it's like, I kind of like this one better because you just kind of let it do
Yeah.
its thing. And the same thing
Right.
can be said about a lot of songs like that too. Like my dad used to tell me all the time, like everybody that started doing cover songs, he's like, "Oh, this sounds the same." To me, I'm like, at first I didn't understand what he meant. I think it doesn't sound the
Right.
same. There's two different sounds, but if you go and listen to them side by side, they're basically the same song. Essentially,
Yeah.
everybody's doing it in their own style though, like they're just letting it do their thing. And that's what I love about music is it doesn't have to have a label to it. Everyone wants to give it a label, but it's like, what does it
Right.
matter? Just enjoy the song for what it's worth.
Yeah. Hey, something you said earlier I want to touch on,
hmm
and that is you sent Weird Heart out to some fellow mates of yours. And here's an interesting side piece to this is that I will never know what Weird Heart sounds like not knowing the backstory.
Yeah.
And that is something that is interesting to me. It's like, what does it sound like not knowing the backstory? Because here you have this little girl's voice, and then this man basically just screaming, "I got a weird heart. It feels so, so cold, icky, icky, awful." And what in the world? How does that get perceived without knowing the backstory? And then once you now know the backstory, whoa, what is the change? How that changes the temperature in the room of how you perceive the song as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna send it out to some of my musician friends that have been on the show too. A couple of them I can think of. At least Lucy for sure, Brian for sure. There's another guy. He runs a band called Lives Lost. Hannes is the lead singer of that band. I talk to him all the time. I'm gonna send it out. I'm not gonna tell him the backstory. Like, hey, listen, do me a favor. Listen to this song first. Tell me what you think, and then I'm gonna. There's a reason I'm asking this. I'm gonna tell you in a minute. Just listen to it, and let me think, and then see what they think, and then give them
Yeah,
the email. Like, here you go. Read this email then, and tell me what you think and what they think, and I'll have to let you know what their responses are to it. Because Lucy is a really good lyricist herself, so I know she does a lot of vocal work with people. So I'm
yeah.
interested to see what her opinions are about it.
Right. And it is funny too because, oftentimes in songwriting we'll think a song's done. And then maybe I'll enter the late stages of the writing. I'm like, man, I found a mistake in there. I gotta fix that. And sometimes while I'm recording the vocal line, I'm like, oh shoot, I found something. Sometimes after release, the
hmm
song is out into the world. I'm like, man, I missed this spot. What am I doing? It's just the craziest thing where you hear that stuff like that. And oh man, it's just such a thrill to think that you would be a great musicologist, meaning that you're going to do a little bit of research on what does Weird Heart sound like to a cold ear versus somebody
Hmm.
who knows the backstory.
Right? Yeah, I'm gonna start comparing it to things because I love music. Like I said, music's always been a big thing for me. I listen to anything, honestly. Like if I like a
Yeah,
song, I like a song. It's not doesn't matter what it is. Like I still
right.
listen to Marilyn Manson these days, and people are like, "You listen to Marilyn Manson?" Like, dude, y'all missing out, dude. Like that's my guy, man. That's my jam right there.
Yeah,
Him, Corn, Linkin Park. I mean, I grew up in that right in that nestled right in that right there, like old school Metallica, right before Saint Anger changed the way they sounded. You know what I mean? Like things like that.
right.
I'm just like, I got a taste of it all, man. Billy Joel,
Yeah,
Elton John. Like I've had all these different influences. My mom was big into Elton John and all that kind of stuff like that too. My
yeah,
brother was my big introducer to music because he listened to Nirvana, Ugly Kid Joe. Green
right.
Day, all those other kind of, other bands like that. Seven Dust is one that I really liked that I took away from that group. And then Marilyn Manson, I heard his earlier stuff and it was like, okay, sometimes you're
Right.
not gonna always like everything everybody puts out. I get that because Papa Roach is
An
one of my
artist is
favorite
supposed
bands
to
too. So
evolve.
yeah,
An
they do.
artist
You
is
can
supposed
tell.
to evolve their sound.
Hmm.
Yeah,
You can tell definitely if you listen to a lot of the older stuff versus the newer stuff. For a lot of bands, like Korn is one of my favorite bands of all time. I like listening to them where they started to where they're now. The sound
yeah,
evolves. Papa Roach, I remember hearing their first album in high school and to where they're now. It's like the sound has evolved completely, and I still love them regardless. I love everything they put out.
yeah,
Cold's another big one I was big into. Like I said early on in the early stages,
yeah,
before they decided to take a break after Different Kind of Pain was released when Jeremy did that song for one of the fans that had lost somebody. I still think that stuff is so cool to me. It's just like this
yeah,
guy took all the time in the world and he loved all his fans so much that he'd end up doing this for somebody. It was like, man, that says a lot to you when somebody does that for you, regardless of how much of somebody. And
yeah.
I listen to anything, honestly. Like I said, I listen to everything. Like I love a lot of punk rock too. I like a lot of the Ramones. My mom actually is the one that got me into the Ramones originally,
Ones are
and it did
awesome.
the Sex Pistols and things like that too. And then I evolved to no Effects is always great because they're always just like kind of like random songs. Like No Effects is always great because it fits right into what you're teaching these guys. Just go and put whatever out there. It doesn't matter because these
Doesn't
sometimes
matter.
it just feels like what he's doing. He's just throwing things out there, and you're like, what the hell is going on in this song? But I like it. I don't know. I'm not really hating this, but okay.
Yeah.
And things like that too. And Rise Against is one of my favorite bands nowadays too. I love Blink
Hmm.
182 is really great. Just the corniness of the guys. And
Right.
it's just all these different things. Like I don't care what it is. I'll listen. Backstreet Boys is a big one of mine. I listen to, we can sell that debate now. Backstreet, it's over in sync always. Okay. I'll break out a song all the time. When that song comes out, I'll break it out. Billy Joel for the
Sure.
longest time. I remember that song by heart. My mom used to play the song all the time. Kiss was always great for us. We got to experience Kiss when they were back in the heyday. Gene Simmons is always somebody great to listen to and things like that too. And like I said, I've always loved music, so I really do
Yeah.
appreciate what you're doing, teaching these guys music and
Thank you.
different outlets. Because I think
Something
that
that's Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, something that's really interesting about a Weird Heart itself is it's not necessarily a sad song. It's not a funeral
Mm-mm.
song. It's a song of expression of, hey, I feel funny inside. Delilah was super empathetic, meaning she took on everyone else's pain. She took
Mm-hmm.
on everyone else's thoughts and feelings. It's not a sad song at all. But I've had people that have rejected it saying, oh, it's so sad. I'm like, well, the story, not of the writing of the song, but the story that happened to this little girl, that is sad. Oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
terrible. It's heartbreaking. But boy, if we can get out there, we have a chance of saving someone's life if we can just let them know that it's a safe thing to just
Mm-hmm.
jump on a pen and paper and write a song or scream in a microphone or scream into the voice memo app on your phone. Well, I'm driving, I'm often writing lyrics, but I don't write. Obviously, I just hit the voice memo app and I'm like, blah, 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 just singing out lyrics. And they probably look pretty funny doing it, but it doesn't matter. It's the idea that
Yeah.
thinking and getting thoughts and feelings out. And so Weird Heart is not a sad song. It's not a
No,
funeral
it's
song.
not. I've listened to it. I can tell you right now, it's not. It's a great song for what it is. You know what I mean? Until you know the story, and then the story changes your perception. That's why I always want to introduce somebody to this song. I'm like, let me share you what it is. Let me listen to it first, and then let me tell you what the story about it is, because I want to get your honest opinion. What do you think? And then
Yeah.
always
Well, I
like a lot of
appreciate
people's. So like like I said, as soon as I got that email, I was like, you know what? I'm like instant. You sent it to me. I was like, I read it, and I finally I got a chance to read it. I was like, hold up, I got this email I got to read. Because I get lots of emails. So like I try to get to them as best I can. As soon as I came to yours, I was like, you know what? Let's go one step better. Let's invite him to come on and hear the story about her and hear about what he's doing and things like that. And I was like, somebody else was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm like, yeah, see, I know. So I was excited when
Thank
you
you.
responded back. You were like, "Oh my God, yes, that'd be awesome." I'm like, well, why not? That'd be great to have somebody come on and talk about this, and we could talk about her and the process and what you're doing with these guys and things like that as well. So I appreciate you coming and talking about her today. And like I said, I'm going to share the song with everybody, but we're going to do the same thing. We're going to tell them to listen to it first, and then I'm going to tell them to share in the email. Be like, listen, I want to see your response first to see what you
You're
think of
my
this song. So I
you're
will
my
definitely be in touch to let you know. So sure.
you're my official musicologist studies.
I love music. I told you, I love it. I listen to
It's
everything, every song I listen to. I love it. I got a lot of 'em. I love the ones that get stuck in your head because then I'm just randomly just singing them out. All of a sudden, people are like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm listening to this." So I'm always the guy that's always introducing people to stuff. Like, "Oh yeah, have you heard this song before?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Oh man, you got to hear this song. Check this out."
yeah,
Like I'll start randomly just belting out songs every so often. And they're like, "What are you singing?" I'm like, "Oh, you never heard this? Here, let me pull it up for you." It's a great introduction to get people to listen to something. Like, "Oh yeah, here, let me pull it up for you real quick. Here you go." And I always got it on
yeah,
my Spotify playlist of just songs for people to check out. Yeah, check this out. Yeah, you haven't heard this before? Yeah, come on, check this one out.
right.
So, it's always
Music
fun.
that piece of music is one of the most awesome things because it's something you can share,
Mm-hmm.
something you can give away, but you still get to keep it for yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a limited product. It is you can get it out there and it is so beautiful that way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. I love it. I love it too. And a lot of people appreciate the fact that I'm doing that because everybody refers to me as a master networker. So I'm always talking to people about things and I'm always sharing things with people. So that's one of the things too, like music wise. I'm always like, hey, oh, y'all haven't heard this before? Yeah, you got to check this out. Anybody I know that likes music, I got a friend named Pete as well. He runs a radio station called, Talking Shit with Pete is his online handle. So I'm going to reach out to him about playing the song too. I'm like, hey, Pete, do me a favor. Can you play this song and see about him playing it? Because he broadcasts on the Badass Radio Network is where he's at. So I'm going to see about him playing the song on there, and then I'm going to tell him the backstory about it too. The same thing. I want to see what Pete's reaction is first, and then ask him like, "Hey Pete, all right, I want to tell you exactly what the story behind the song is, and then see what your thoughts are now, and just see what he says. Things like that, man. So like I said, Joseph, I appreciate you reaching out. I really do, man.
I
I've
appreciate
enjoyed
you.
this whole time, man. This is so great. I really appreciate you taking the time to come hang out with us today and everything like that. Before we wrap up, I did want to ask you a question though.
Yeah, please.
Listen, if you could break the stigma about mental health, anything that you feel like you hear people say, what would you say that would be?
The
Just in your
stigma.
honest opinion, just any honest opinion, anything that you don't like that you hear people saying that you just think people need to stop believing, anything that you just feel right off the top of your head.
You know what's really interesting is we all, even the healthiest of us all, go through thoughts and feelings and emotions, ups and downs, and it's a roller coaster ride. Holy cow. I mean, it can be hour by hour, minute by minute, day to day. It can be one mean look from a coworker or a friend. It can be one misinterpreted word in a text. It can be so many things that let us launch us into a roller coaster. We're all there. I mean, us humans, we're no good without our brains. And so, boy, that mental health piece is so important. I encourage everyone to get out there and pursue some sort of art, whether it's songwriting or whether it's carving or painting. I encourage everyone to do some physical thing, whether it's kayaking, biking, or get your yayas out in some way, like my adult students that play the drums, and they walk out of here saying, "Thanks for the therapy." I'm not talking to them about much. I'm screaming the microphone while they're playing drums, and yet that's their therapy, is the
Yeah.
physical nature of just getting it out and just hitting them hard. And little did I, how important it was to them on a weekly basis just to come in and smash them. So everybody out there, find a way to find your path. Some people love parachuting. That's great. Some people love scuba diving with sharks. That's a thrill and that's great. I'm sure those are very therapeutic things, but they're not for everybody. And so find your thing. My thing happens to be songwriting and sharing it with the world, but find your own personal thing. And oh man, we're just all the better off for it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you, Joseph, being here today, guys. And with that being said, we're going to wrap up this episode of Pete versus Anxiety. Joseph, do you want to let everybody know where they can find you if they want to reach out to you? Obviously, if you're in the Minneapolis area, to reach out to you for sure. Definitely where to reach out to you for.
Right. Yeah. So jump on Spotify and Apple and look up Joseph Schertz. That's my artist name. That's me. And then from there, you can find Weird Heart and listen to Delilah there as well. But it's on all the streaming services all around the
We'll
world.
make sure we're going to tag it below for
Yeah.
sure for everybody, for sure.
Appreciate
No
that.
problem.
One thing that Delilah's mom did tell me after she had died was, wow, my daughter actually gets to do what she always dreamed of doing now. And that means she's out there in 250 countries around the world right now. That's an amazing feeling for me. That's therapeutic for me to think that I contributed in helping this young person's legacy. It'll be there hopefully long past I'm gone. So there's that piece of the puzzle there that's like, okay, get it out there as best as I can. Obviously I didn't have a huge $3 million budget to record this. We recorded it right here in the basement studio, So for what it is, we're doing our best. So yeah, you can find it on any streaming service. You just have to look up my name, and it's Joseph, and the last name is Schertz, which is Hertz Rent-A-Car with an SC in front of it.
Definitely. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for being here again, man. I appreciate you coming and hang out with me today, guys. So with that being said, we're wrapping this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. You know where to find me. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety. I'm on X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to Pandora Radio. And as I always say, it costs nothing absolutely to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save someone's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety signing off saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's your mental health today?